Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Tuesday edition of Interesting Ideas. I'm Stan Houston. Thank you for your time. And yes, the title of our little conversation today is just that. It is one of the memorials in Washington, D.C. that was hated by many, many people. And yet, it is the one that is the most visited today. And perhaps you know what I'm talking about. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that story and about a story that also will help us to see that from time to time, first impressions aren't the best impression. And sometimes first ways of thinking aren't the best way of thinking. But perhaps you need a person who has a long, clear vision. A long, clear vision, particularly in turbulent and sometimes terrifying times. I'm Stan Houston. That's my interesting idea for today, and please join me, and we'll take a few minutes on this Tuesday in which you're very busy, perhaps to think about some thoughts that might be helpful and useful for you. That program begins right now. And here is the story I'd like to tell you, okay? Here we go. Whenever 18-year-old Maya Lynn walked through Yale University's Memorial Rotunda, she couldn't resist passing her fingers over the marble walls engraved with the names of those alumni who had died in the service of their country. Throughout her freshman and sophomore years, she watched as stonecutters added to the honor roll, etching the names of those killed in the Vietnam War. I think it left a lasting impression on me, Lynn wrote, the sense of the power of a name. Now, these memories were fresh in the mind of the daughter of Chinese immigrants, senior year, when, as a part of an assignment in her funeral architecture seminar, she designed a walled monument to veterans of the Vietnam War that was etched with the names of those who gave their lives. She was encouraged by her professor. The architecture student entered it into the national design competition being held for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial to be built on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Now you're getting the story. And adhering to the competition rules required that the memorial be apolitical and contain the names of all those confirmed dead and missing in action in the Vietnam War. Lynn's design called for the names of nearly 58,000 American servicemen, listed in chronological order of their loss, to be etched in a V-shaped wall of a polished black granite sunken into the ground. The competition gathered more than 1,400 submissions, so many that an Air Force hangar was called in to service to display all the entries for the judging. Since all submissions were anonymous, the 8-member jury made its selection based solely on the quality of the designs. It ultimately chose entry number 1026, which it found to be an eloquent place where the simple meeting of earth and sky and remembered names contains messages for all. Her design only earned a B in her class at Yale, so Lynn was shocked when competition officials came to her dormitory room in May 1981 and informed the 21-year-old that she had won the design and the $20,000 first prize. Not only was Lynn not a trained architect, she didn't even have a bachelor's degree in architecture at the time. From the very beginning, I often wondered if it had not been an anonymous entry 1026, but rather an entry by Maya Lynn, would I have even been selected? Well, okay, that's a wonderful part of the story of how that happened. But now, scene 2. Guess what happened when the design was put out? there was an uproar. All kinds of people thought it was terrible. Secretary of the Interior James Watt, who administered the site, sided with the critics and blocked the project until changes were made. Over Lynn's objection, the Federal Commission of Fine Arts bowed to political pressure and approved the addition to the memorial of a 50-foot high flagpole on which to fly the Stars and Stripes, and an 8-foot high statue of 3 soldiers sculpted by Frederick Hart, who called Lynn's design nihilistic. The commission, however, mandated that they not be placed directly adjacent to the wall in order to preserve Lynn's design and intent as much as possible. A statue dedicated to the women who served in the Vietnam War was also added to the site in 1993. It took a long time for that memorial to be accepted for some, but for many, all of a sudden, they got it. They got it. And there were so many wonderful things about it that happened. And, of course, you all know about it. Now, it is the most visited memorial in Washington, D.C. And, of course, it was, at the same time, that war was incredibly politically divisive. Those of us who lived through that time, and we're at an age and stage now where we're certainly older, it was difficult, terribly difficult. But all of a sudden, we began to realize what was happening. Lynn had said that, it's not to honor the dead. It's to help and encourage the living to remember. And so there it was. And of course, it is a place where people come, and the genius of not just listing the names by alphabetical order, but in the order that they died. So obviously there's going to be a lot of James Smiths, but what would happen is that it would be a very particular James Smith, or whatever the name might be. And it would be in the order in which they had given their life for their country. Well, I point that out just as a reminder that, first of all, the first impression of something may not be the best. And then what people say, and as I said, many of the people who criticized it were people in good faith who just simply thought that, no, this isn't going to work. And that's why they insisted that there be the 3 soldiers looking at it from a distance, and then somebody insisted there be a flagpole. And she went along with that. She knew the art of compromise, but she stuck to the point. As she said, what I wanted to show was like some gash had been made in the earth. Violence. But in that violence emerges a memorial, a good thing to remember. These are the men and women who lost their lives in the service of their country. I don't know if we do that much anymore. If we're still doing that, I don't know. I go to a church in New York City where my daughter goes, and it's one of those old classic churches, and I don't even know if they do it, but you still go by a plaque that has the list of all of the people from that parish who died in World War I. And that's a long time ago. And even at that time, it was kind of shocking to see how many young men from that parish perished in the First World War. And obviously, if there was one there for the Second World War, which I'm not sure there is, it would probably have just as many. And so that's the world we live in. And that's the world we have to make our best work in. So just remember the story of someone who had an artistic vision. And this is the point I want to make. These are the kinds of people we need today. We need more of the Maya Lynns. And because of what she was able to do and what she was able to create, there was a description given to her that is very powerful, and it's one that I hope that I would someday have, and perhaps you would too. So, what do you think that description is? Well, just take a moment, give it a little bit of thought, and we'll be back to tell you about Maya Lynn, who's no longer a student by any means. Obviously, that was 40-some years ago. Let's talk about something she had, which is vitally needed today. I'm Stan Houston. This is Interesting Ideas. We're here because we're interested in you, and we're interested in doing things that will make our world better. And sometimes, before we can make our business better and make our world better, we have to be better. We'll be right back. Okay, I'm continuing the story that I began with, which is actually written by a gentleman named Christopher Klein. Christopher Klein. And it was simply a biography in a section on biographies in the Wikipedia section. As I said, it's Christopher Klein. Again, we always want to give affirmation and attention and commendation to those people who give us the interesting ideas. He continues the story by saying, after the memorial wall was unveiled on November 13th, 1982, the controversy quickly subsided. When Lynn first visited the proposed location for the memorial, she wrote, "I imagined taking a knife and cutting into the earth, opening it up, and an initial violence and pain that in the time would heal." That's what we said. Now, her memorial proved to be a pilgrimage site for those who served in the war, and those who had loved ones who fought in Vietnam. It became a sacred place of healing and reverence as she intended. Not even 3 years after the memorial opened, the New York Times reported, "It was something of a surprise at how quickly America has overcome the divisions caused by the Vietnam Veterans Memorial." It helped the healing. And that's what she intended. So eventually, the term that was used to describe this very talented woman was she had a long, clear vision. A long, clear vision. You know, having a long view, a long vision, a long view of life and a long vision of what might be is a very rare quality today. In fact, one of the things that I'm trying to say in my little words of prayer as I go through some real difficulties that we're going through right now, and so are you, we all are. Everybody's carrying a big burden somewhere, somehow, is, Lord, give me the long view. Give me the long, clear view. In the midst of the mess that we're all in, let us see. Let us have the grace and the ability and the calmness and maybe the kindness to have a long, clear view. I hope that rings true for you. I'm Stan Houston. This is Interesting Ideas. And we're done for today on Tuesday. I hope you'll do some work on that. Why don't you now read some of that stuff yourself about the Vietnam Veterans Memorial? I was just sharing this story with a friend, and he said, "You're right. Our family went there 3 years ago, and it was incredible. Now I know something of the story, and that makes it even more special." And I would suggest you do the same thing. If you've seen it, remember it and see some of the significance in it. Certainly make it as part of your plans. As we say, of all the things to see that the tourists can go to in Washington, D.C., it's still the top place in the space. And of course, every day, people are there seeing the names, making those gold pig. You put the piece of paper up and then you can put the name on it, and leaving gifts for children and leaving things. All of that is collected every day and given to charity and people who can use it, people who can be blessed by it. So please keep in mind that we are indeed in difficult times, but give us the grace and the ability and the confidence and the courage to have a long, clear view. If you do, I think things will go well for you. Best and blessings. All the best. Till next time, I'm Stan Houston. Bye for now.